Hi guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So, before I get started in today's case, I've got kind of a little request for you guys. I might do like a poll kind of situation, or you guys can leave your comments in the section down below. I want to start doing cases from around the world, different countries. So whichever country gets mentioned the most, I'll find a case for that country and cover it, just to kind of mix things up a bit. Because I find that I tend to do a lot of cases based in the UK and the US. So, also before we get into today's video, please don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. And also in the comment section you can leave cases that you'd like me to cover in the future, and I'll do my best to do so. But without further ado, let's just get straight into today's case. I'm sure you guys can tell by the title, but this case is a bit more of an old case, a historical case, because I feel like I haven't done one of those for a long time, and I do personally enjoy those cases myself. So, on August the 4th, 1892, Andrew and Abby Borden were brutally murdered in their home in Fall River, Massachusetts. Their heads had been split open in a fit of rage from nearly a dozen blows from a hatchet. There was no theft and no sign of a break-in. Their 32-year-old daughter, Lizzie Borden, was at home when her parents were killed. She inherited her father's multi-million-dollar fortune, and everyone in Fall River believed that she killed her parents in cold blood. But in the end, there simply was not enough evidence to convict her, and she was allowed to go free. Nearly 120 years later, the case is still an unsolved mystery. Did Lizzie Borden really kill her parents, or is this the identity of the real killer still unknown? The Borden legacy and Lizzie's childhood. Andrew Borden came from a long line of wealthy and successful people, but his own parents struggled with poverty. As a young man, he started working as an underwriter at a bank in Fall River, Massachusetts. He used his paychecks to purchase investments, real estate, and ran furniture and textile businesses. He was eventually promoted as the manager of the bank, and even though he was making a lot of money, he only paid for the bare necessities for himself and his family. His fortune grew to over $300,000, which is the modern day equivalent of $8 million. He married a woman named Sarah Anthony Morse, and they had 3 children together. Emma was the oldest. They had a second daughter named Alice, who died as a baby. Lizzie Borden was the youngest daughter, born in 1860. When she was only 2 years old, Lizzie's mother, Sarah, became gravely ill. Emma was 12 at the time, so she was old enough to remember the death of her sister. Alice and fully understood the gravity of losing their mother. On her deathbed, Emma swore to take care of baby Lizzie like a mother, and she took that promise very seriously. 3 years after Sarah's death, Andrew Borden married a woman named Abby Durfee. Emma, who was 15 at the time, refused to address Abby as mother and called her by her first name their entire childhood. Lizzie grew up to be very close with her sister Emma, who truly did feel more like a mother than a big sister. However, this backfired because teenage Emma was constantly reminding her younger sister that their birth mother was dead. Because of this, Lizzie never formed a close relationship with her stepmother. She later described their relationship as cordial, but she grew up feeling as though she never really knew her mother's love. Now, there's not too much information out there about the relationship that Lizzie had with her father. However, we know that he was a very busy man with a full-time job at the bank and running his own businesses on the side. Lizzie claimed to love him very much, but his shrewd business tactics and lack of empathy for customers, defaulting on their loans, caused some people in town to dislike him and his family. Lizzie Borden's elementary school teachers described her as being aloof, so she was either painfully shy or felt She also believed that her stepmother was trying to take advantage of his fortune. When she was 27 years old, Lizzie's father gave a house to his wife's half-sister for free. This made Lizzie and Emma furious because they were his own daughters, and yet he had never given them such an extravagant gift. When he realised how unfair this was, he gave his daughters the deed to the house he grew up in to try to pacify them. However, there was a strict code of etiquette that unmarried women could not live alone. Since Emma and Lizzie never found husbands, owning the deed to their grandfather's home was virtually useless, and they were never allowed to move out of their father's house. They eventually sold the house back to their father for $5,000. Even after doing this, it was still not enough to make up for the jealousy and resentment Lizzie felt towards her stepmother Abby. She stopped calling her mother and only referred to her as Mrs. Borden. Lizzie Borden was unhappy living with her father and stepmother, and she spent as much time out of the house as she possibly could. Soon after their argument about the houses, Andrew Borden agreed to let Lizzie visit Europe, but the trip abroad only made her realise just how much she had missed in her younger years. When she returned home to the US, she often chose not to eat meals with her parents and went up to her bedroom without saying hello. Life in the Borden house went on like this for several more years. In 1892, Lizzie Borden was 32 years old and her sister Emma was 42. Neither of them had gotten married. In the 1800s, this made them spinsters, or women who were considered to be far too old to find a husband. There is no record of why they were never married, but their family issues clearly had something to do with it. Lizzie continued to devote herself to church and the local animal rescue. She was raising a family of pigeons on their property, and she loved them like pets. In June of that same year, Andrew purchased a hatchet and started killing Lizzie's birds so he could save money on meat. Lizzie may have felt that her window of opportunity to escape this dysfunctional family and find a better life was closing in on her. Lizzie's friend Alice Russell rushed over to the house to see what was wrong. Lizzie was hysterical and leaned on Alice for comfort. Lizzie asked Bridget to check upstairs for her stepmother, saying, "Will someone find Mrs. Borden?" Mrs. Borden was lying face down on the floor of one of the guest bedrooms. She had also been killed by an axe, but this time it was in the back of the head. Mrs. Borden's blood was dry, and the medical examiners estimated that she died roughly 2 hours before her husband. This would mean that the killer must have been in the house the entire time, waiting for the perfect opportunity to kill Andrew Borden. Lizzie's sister Emma was out of town visiting a friend, and they had to send a telegram telling her to come home. She had a solid alibi about her whereabouts, so the police removed her as a potential suspect. Bridget the maid was home, but she had nothing to gain by killing her masters. She was also removed as a potential suspect by the police. When the police arrived, it was noted that no one in the house was covered in blood. If Lizzie Borden really did kill her father, she would have had blood splattered all over her clothes. She would not have been able to clean herself off within a matter of 10 minutes, especially without running water in the house. But considering that she was one of the only people home at the time, and she had the most gain from her parents' death, all eyes were on her. The inquest and trial, Lizzie and Emma Borden stood with their family. Members and her father's business associates and their parents at their parents' funeral. Instead of watching their parents' caskets get buried in the ground, the police ordered the bodies to be taken for a second autopsy. The police also had a free rein to search the entire house from top to bottom, and yet they could not find a murder weapon or any solid evidence that would move the identity of the killer. Lizzie Borden was questioned for several hours by the police, and her answers were sometimes inconsistent, as if she couldn't get her story straight. The police saw this as evidence that she was lying. However, her doctor had injected her with morphine before each interview, saying that it would help calm her nerves. These injections would have made her feel mentally cloudy and confused. In some cases, the drug can even cause delusions and hallucinations. Despite having this drug running through her veins, she still never confessed to killing her parents. Leading up to the trial, Emma Borden and Alice Russell witnessed Lizzie Borden burning one of her dresses in the backyard. She claimed that she was simply disposing of old clothes that had paint stains on them. She gave the police the blue dress that everyone had witnessed her wearing the day of the murders, and it was completely free of blood. They also never found a bloody dress when searching the house. However, the police saw the burning of the mystery dress as a sign that she may have changed. pharmacist named Ellie Pence testified in court that Lizzie Borden requested to buy potassium the day before the murder, but he refused to sell it to her because he suspected that she had terrible intentions. When the police exhumed the bodies of Mr. and Mrs. Borden, the autopsy report showed that they had never been poisoned. It was just bad food after all. So Mr. Pence's claim didn't prove that Lizzie did anything wrong. Her neighbour and friend, Alice Russell, also testified against her about burning her dress. However, without having the actual dress on hand, they could not prove that there was ever blood on it. Even after having a year to prepare their case, the police only had circumstantial evidence against Lizzie Borden, and it was simply not enough to prove that she was guilty. The members of the jury were all men, which was customary at the time. All of them had a very hard time believing that the same woman who was the Sunday school teacher could really be the same monster who committed cold-blooded murder. They thought it was more likely that a prowler broke into the home and killed Mr. and Mrs. Borden. They only took 90 minutes to make the decision that she was not guilty. Lizzie Borden goes free after her parents' deaths. Lizzie and her sister Emma split their father's inheritance in half, and it was more than enough money to take care of them for the rest of their lives. They could finally afford to buy a luxurious house on the hill called Maplecroft. They also hired a staff of maids and a driver to take them anywhere they wanted to go in a horse-drawn coach. Lizzie changed her name to Lisbeth after moving, in hopes of escaping her reputation. In her mind, the life on the hill may have seemed like a million miles away, but the reality was that they were still in Fall River. Her reputation as a murderer continued to follow her for the rest of her life. Magazines reported false rumours that she was a shoplifter and that she killed baby kittens and birds as a child. People did not want to sit near her in church, and her house was pummeled with rotten eggs on a regular basis. No one wanted to be associated with this woman who may have murdered her parents. Local children made up a rhyme about her murder and enjoyed singing it outside her window. This is a rhyme very much associated with this case, and it goes as follows. Lizzie Borden took an axe. She gave her mother a 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Despite all of the criticism, Lizzie never moved far away to escape the ridicule and tried to make the best of her situation. She began attending plays at the local theatre and threw parties in her new home for the cast and crew. She seemed to be particularly infatuated with an actress named Nancy O'Neill. O'Neill was known for having a deep voice and a masculine attitude, which led some she moved far away to escape the bad reputation that the Borden name brought them, and the sisters never saw each other again. Some people speculate that this is proof of Lizzie's guilt and that she must have confessed to Emma. However, Emma left shortly after one of Lizzie's big parties in which the actress Nancy O'Neill had attended. Some people believe that it may be more likely that she was caught in a lesbian affair, or Emma simply disapproved of her new lifestyle. Lizzie Borden continued to live alone in her Maplecroft mansion for the rest of her life, and she died at the age of 66. She left a significant portion of her estate to the Fall River Animal Rescue League in her will, and she also left thousands of dollars to each of her close friends and cousins. Today, both her childhood home by the river and Maplecroft mansion were purchased by an investor and turned into museums. And until this day, people still speculate whether Lizzie Borden truly killed her parents, but the world may never know. And that brings us to the end of today's case. It was a bit of a strange one, very bizarre. I believe there's a film based on this story called Lizzie, and there are other details in there which aren't very important to the case. However, it's probably worth going and watching after, of course, listening to my version of it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video.